Hi, class. So I was going to kind of write an entire essay about my time abroad, but I thought giving a little story time would be a better way of doing that because there's so many different pieces that I want to implement in, and I feel like just talking is better. So in 2023, I had the ability to study abroad in Amsterdam's red light district for 2 months. And our basis of going over there was to study the Dutch criminal justice system versus the American criminal justice system, with an emphasis on human trafficking and studying a lot of human trafficking. So the fascinating part about this is the way they broke it up was everyone we met every day were from very different parts of this like major system of what was going on. So, try to explain that better. We met with law enforcement and we interviewed them a lot on how they combat human trafficking in Amsterdam's red light district where legalized sex work is happening, and kind of got a better idea of what they thought about it and just how they go about it. And then we shifted into meeting with trafficked victims that escaped. And that's what I'm really going to focus on because they talk a lot about the systems of power holding them in this horrible situation. And then we also got to meet with LGBTQ plus individuals that were legalized sex workers in the blue light district of Amsterdam, which, if you didn't know, Amsterdam has a red light district, which is legalized sex work and mostly females. And then the blue light district is also legalized sex work, but that is for LGBTQ plus individuals. So we got to meet with those individuals as well and kind of get a whole nother layer of how very much they are one of the, you know, when it comes to when you think about trafficking, you think migrant women, but that is also a major community affected by this that not many people really understand. So it was really interesting to kind of see all the different sides of it. We had the legal side, and then we also got to meet with individuals that escaped trafficking, and we also got to meet with individuals who say, I work in this red light district or blue light district, I pay my taxes, I go home at night, and I am not in any danger. So it was very interesting to have all of these different elements and still trying to process that this human trafficking was going on so prevalently in that place. Now, it was really interesting to see as time went on and we learned more and more on our free time walking through the red light district, you were able to pinpoint the pimps that were standing outside of those windows. And it was very, very visible. And one of the biggest things those pimps do as a strategy, and unfortunately, this is what law enforcement did tell us, is pimps will go and try and shake an officer's hand in front of a girl in the window and say, you can't go to them for help. You can't, this is my friend, you know? And shame on any of the officers that maybe know what was going on and still decided to shake their hand. That's also another layer of the corruption that goes on in that area. Um, but to kind of turn it back to what my entire compendium is about is the basis of the systems of power that are keeping people in these situations. So I got to meet with two amazing individuals named Anna and Olivia, and meeting them is what sparked my entire passion for this whole route to combat as many human trafficking things as I can in my lifetime, which I, again, as I've said multiple times, want to devote my life to this and help as many individuals as I can have a free life that they are have every right to live. Um, so when we met with Anna and Olivia, they also wrote a book, which I'm going to link into my compendium as well. Their book is called Body for Rent. It is an extraordinary book. It is a very dark book. It is a lot, but it really showed you a baseline story of exactly what these girls went through. And they were trafficked for a very long time, and in a way that when the media pushes out anything about trafficking victims, they were the complete opposite of what the media portrays as these victims and victimizing them and marginalizing them more. This was two girls that were best friends growing up. They One of them met a guy that was close with her family in general, and he said, come work with me. I want you to be a model. I want to give you the world, this and that. He psychologically, made her fall in love with him, as many pimps do, to add to that, psychological abuse that they're going to endure. And as a lot of stories start, it was all rainbows and sunshines. He was an older man, but her family knew him and trusted him. And, she went and lived with him. And that is when things really started to turn south, when there was no food on the table unless she was being put into a hotel room that night with a man. And she was 13 years old when this all started. Um, That was Anna. And Olivia also, unfortunately, her best friend got very tied into the two of them as well and ended up being the second trafficked victim from this man. At first, they were too young to be in the red light district of Amsterdam, so he started them in motels, multiple men a day. Um, Pedophiles, obviously, they were children. It is very hard for me to even talk about because it really does, horrible. Um, and as time went on, the abuse got a lot worse. They were being beat all day, every day. No clothes, no food, no nothing. And as time went on and they got older, they were stuck, they were trapped, they were psychologically abused in ways that they can't even fathom to this day. As time went on, he put them into Amsterdam's red light district and they worked in the windows. Now, there are women in the windows that, as I said, that I met with that say, I pay my taxes, I do my job, and I go home at night, and I am not in any danger. No one is forcing me to do this. Unfortunately, for these two individuals, they were completely forced into these windows with him outside, watching and making sure they were making that money. But every single day, any cent of money they were making was not going to them whatsoever. And that's where the coercion and fraud and all of that comes into human trafficking. So, as time went on, they were in the windows. They were also working motels. They were being abused left and right. And one day, I believe it was at least 8 years into being trafficked, they looked at each other and decided that they were going to run away. And a lot of people ask when it comes to human trafficking, why isn't their first thought to run away? And no one understands the psychological abuse these individuals go through to get to a point where they don't think they can leave. They don't think there's any other option because either their family's being threatened, their passports being held. There are many things that these individuals are going to do over time to make sure that those girls don't think there is any other option. And that's what happened. So they decided, and this was like a almost like a rare case because you don't always hear about this, but they decided one day sitting on the beach to just go, to just leave. And I remember I don't know where they exactly went, but the reason that their pimp got caught was because the pimp ended up going after her father and trying to attempted murder. And that's the only reason the pimp was able to get arrested at that point. So again, he was not arrested for any trafficking charges, and we see this many times where the traffickers unfortunately end up getting off. He did not get charged with anything to do with trafficking. The type of evidence and things that you need for that and law enforcement to go through that is very complex. So they took the route of sending him to jail for attempted murder, and he was out pretty quickly after that. And the saddest part of it all was when they came back, once he was arrested, they went right back into those windows. But this time they were doing it freely. Just shows another theme of they didn't think there was any other option. They didn't know anything else. And the system that they were living in, they had no other option. They couldn't go to law enforcement. They couldn't go to any social services. They felt lost, trapped, and the only thing that they could do was go back to the red light district and do what they know how to do. So that's what they did. They went back to the red light district and ended up working in the red light district freely for about 2 or 3 years after that. So meeting with them, that was kind of a very fast blurb of their story, which I'll link their book again if anyone has interest in it. It's an absolutely amazing book. Um, but they didn't have any other option. They didn't have any other resources. They didn't have an out. And their only out was luckily slightly trying to escape and this pimp going to jail for that situation. So tying this all into just the systems of power and, capitalism, patriarchy, how law enforcement is involved. I did a lot of research and studies these past months in different classes just on like the hidden realities of Amsterdam's red light district when it comes to legalized consensual sex work versus people that are being forced into it in that same place. How do you go about that? How does law enforcement go about that? And we see a lot of times, unfortunately, like I said in my other video, a white Dutch woman might get a lot more attention than a migrant woman who has no passport and can't really speak Dutch. So there's a lot of complications, and that's why it was so interesting to go on and interview some of those police officers and then talk to the women and just have so much disconnect, so much disconnect. And for the LGBTQ plus community, it was also interesting because they had an additional layer of social services that almost didn't seem provided for the red light district. So it was very interesting to see that there were outsources for them, which was huge and amazing, but a little bit complicated when it came to those girls that were being trafficked in the red light district. So yeah, that was a lot, but I wanted to kind of emphasize the aspect of capitalism in this part because that place, the red light district, Amsterdam, monetizes on sex work. That is what it is there. That is just how it is. And I did a study on Thailand and the hidden realities of Thailand sex work and how their economy is really the basis is unfortunately sex trafficking. I wouldn't even say sex work because almost everyone in Thailand is unfortunately being trafficked. So it's just crazy to see how our systems of power sustain this and allow this to happen because they're monetizing off of it and they're making money off of it and they are very well happy with that happening and they're okay with that. And that needs to change. And that is what I'm going to strive to change for the rest of my life. Whether it is the smallest change that I can do, I will be there to do it. And I hope one day to go back into the red light district and analyze it more with all the knowledge I've learned from this year's classes too, and more about the systems of power and kind of really find sources to like understand some of this even more now. But I just wanted to give you guys kind of a big rundown of, a storytelling time of my time abroad. So yeah.